This past weekend of Pokemon GO was filled with content, and there was a lot of mixed feelings around it. And I also wanted to talk about the future of Pokemon GO because there is a lot of cool content that is coming to this game that I do think is worth mentioning. I'm going to be talking about all of this in today's video, so let's roll the intro and get right into it. Hey, how's it going everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's Pokemon GO video. Okay, so over the weekend we had ourselves a couple of events. First and foremost, we had Axew Community Day, which was actually a lot of hype. There was a lot of positive vibes within the Pokemon GO community when it came to this particular community day. Even myself, locally, there was a lot of people who were out and about playing, and it was actually pretty good to see. I feel like for the first time in a long time, we had ourselves a genuinely good community day. So give credit where credit is due, Niantic did actually give us a pretty positive experience here, although I feel like it was innately going to be that way considering what the Pokemon was. Axew was one of those Pokemon that was going to generate a lot of hype if it were to have ever gotten a community day, so maybe a lot of that excitement is a little bit superficial. I mean, it's not necessarily something that Niantic did that was special, but for what it's worth, Axew Community Day went without a hitch, so give credit where credit is due. It was a solid experience. Now, the following day, we had ourselves a special raid day featuring the Lake Trio, and this is where there was a lot of mixed feelings. First and foremost, the reason why we had this special raid day was because Niantic dropped the ball and they made the shiny rate from remote raids for these Pokemon extremely low. So a lot of players discovered that and were complaining about it, and of course Niantic wanted to make up for that by giving us back a whole bunch of remote raid passes, basically the remote raid passes that you spent during the bugged out period, and then they gave us a raid day where the Lake Trio Pokemon were spawning around the clock. Now ultimately, this was a makeup day. It was for something that was not intended and a lot of players were unhappy about, so Niantic did not initially plan for this event to happen. So because of that, there was some overlap with something that players were looking forward to, and that was the release of Shadow Articuno in Shadow Legendary Raids. I think over this weekend, a lot of players would have preferred doing more of those raids as opposed to the Lake Trio, considering that we've had all three of these Pokemon for an extended period of time over the last 2.5 weeks. I think players were ready to move on. Sure, there were players out there who would have wanted the shiny forms of all three Pokemon, but realistically, you would have had to do a lot more raids than just 15 in order to get a shiny of each and every single one of them. From talking to my local community, it seems like there were some players who were dead set on picking up a really high IV Shadow Articuno, but they were not able to do so because the weekend was pretty much taken over by the Lake Trio. So I think this was a bit of a misstep on Niantic's part. Yes, they did have to make up for their mistake, but I think they could have done it in a way where it wouldn't have impeded on other gameplay that players were looking forward to. So yeah, that was a bit of an L, but now let's talk about something that is coming to Pokemon GO that I do believe deserves a lot of hype. Recently at Summer Game Fest, there was a tease for a new feature that's coming to Pokemon GO that has generated a lot of interest within the Pokemon GO community. I'm of course talking about Pokemon GO's route system. This is going to be a system that is going to be almost completely user-generated, and you will be able to get a lot of different gameplay rewards and also interact with other players in a very unique way. A lot of players were speculating that this would be very similar to Ingress's mission system, but it turns out there are some key differences. Basically, you're going to be creating some routes within the game, and then you're going to be able to show off those routes to players in your local areas. You will also be able to get certain rewards by doing those routes, and I do think this is a very interesting system, and it's definitely going to change things up within Pokemon GO in a very positive way. It's going to add an element of sandbox gameplay into Pokemon GO, and I think that's really cool, because when it comes to this game, it's basically a glorified collection game, and there's really not much else you can do aside from collecting Pokemon. So I do like that they're adding elements to make you more interactive with the world, and this is definitely going to be something that's going to spice things up with Pokemon GO. And it's going to open up a lot of additional gameplay and reward structures. In general, I'm just really excited about the potential with the route system. But of course, this is something that not everyone is going to be interested in. There are certainly things with Pokemon GO that players would rather have, but I do think that when it comes to the route system, there's just a lot of potential there. And, you know, you have to give credit where credit is due. Niantic is trying to think outside of the box to spice up the gameplay in some way. So I'm really curious to see how it's going to end up playing out, because if the reward structure is really good and if the route feature is implemented in a bug-free way, then I do think it could be a huge net positive for Pokemon Go. It's definitely going to play a part in Pokemon Go Fest, I think. Like, there's going to be routes all over those places, and I'm wondering how that's going to affect the gameplay. I mean, this is something that a lot of players have not discussed, but this could be something that Niantic utilizes themselves to create some interesting gameplay. Like, there's a city exploration aspect to Pokemon Go Fest, and I'm wondering if routes are going to play a role in that. Aside from user-generated routes, Niantic could create routes themselves, and with those routes, they could allow players to have different story missions, they could have a lot of different special spawns on these routes, and in general, they could make some very interesting gameplay. So yeah, in my opinion, this is a net positive for Pokemon Go, even if not everyone is going to be interested in it. I mean, Niantic has not had the best track record when it came to user-generated content. There's been so much going on with Niantic Wayfair that hasn't really been positive, and I think in general, people are going to be very trepidatious on whether or not this route system is going to be successful. And of course, Niantic did warn about this, but there is that potential that people could use the route system for malicious means, like drawing people into forbidden areas or creating explicit imagery with their routes. Like, a lot of that stuff is possible, and, you know, hopefully Niantic will have checks and balances that will mitigate a lot of that, but we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, from everything that I've heard regarding this route system and from people who have actually tried it, it is actually a really cool form of gameplay, so I'm excited to see what ends up happening with it. But yeah, in general, this was everything that was going on over the weekend with Pokemon Go. I would love to know your thoughts regarding everything that I talked about in the comment section down below. Were you unhappy that Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf were taking over raids and you were not able to do Shadow Articuno? Or were you just completely okay with it? Let me know those thoughts down below, and let's have a great discussion. And of course, also talk about this route feature. I kind of want to gauge where the Pokemon Go community is at when it comes to it. And yeah, I'm really curious to see if it's going to be successful. It's really going to depend on if the community is engaged with it. But yeah, let me know those thoughts as well. And yeah, let's have a great discussion around that. And yeah, with that said, that's going to be it for this video. I really hope you ended up enjoying it. If you did, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. I've been doing a lot of remote raids with my patrons as of late. So if you want to join us up and become a permanent member of my friends list, then what you need to do is become a patron on my Patreon. And you can do that by checking out the links in the description below. And yeah, that's going to be it. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.